All right, all right. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? It has been a time. I hope you all can hear me. It's been a good time since we've been on, but I wanted to come back with a bang and try to come back consistently. So all of those, please share this video. Very important topic conversation today. We have two presenters that's going to be great to have a conversation with about the vaccine, right? So a lot of people are talking about should they get vaccinated? They don't know. They're having like a little questions about it. So we're going to have that conversation today. I'm excited to have you all here. So if you are here, please for sure, make sure that you are sharing the video. I'm not seeing my usual chat. I don't know why I'm not seeing this, but I usually see like my chat from Facebook. I don't know if it's working or not, but okay. But yeah, if you're here, make sure that you are sharing the video and things like that. I'll try to follow along from my Facebook page just to make sure everything is good. All right. So, so if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you have any questions, I'll try to follow along on Facebook because I cannot see anything that's happening on Facebook right now, which I'm not understanding why. But okay. We're not going to let that hold us up. Bless our hearts. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. It's been a blessing. We've been away for far too long, but here we are today. I'm going to start with a friend of mine. We went to school together. His name is Dr. Jackson, and he works at a rheumatology outpatient clinic. And we talked, and I remember just seeing him on Facebook, and he's been a huge advocate of getting vaccinated. And so we want to bring him on to discuss why. And then later on today, we're going to bring on Dr. Mohammed, and he's going to talk to us about some of the cons of getting vaccinated. Okay, so we'll start there. Let me just bring on my good friend here, Dr. Desmond Jackson. Desmond, why don't you just give us a quick introduction of yourself?
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for having me. So, yeah, basically, I am board certified in internal medicine, and I'm also board certified in rheumatology, which is a subspecialty in internal medicine. Rheumatology is involved with the immune system, particularly autoimmune diseases. So, when it comes to infections, when it comes to vaccinations, that the field of rheumatology basically is involved in that. Now, I'm not an infectious disease specialist, but again, rheumatology is involved with the immune system, and the immune system is involved with infections, viral infections, bacterial infections, and vaccinations. So I have to be really up on those topics because my patients, they are prescribed medications that suppress their immune system because they have their immune system actually attacking, itself. So I went to Wayne State University, and I went to Wayne State University School of Medicine. I did my residency program, internal medicine, at St. John Hospital, and then I did my fellowship in rheumatology in University Hospitals in Cleveland. And so I've been practicing in rheumatology clinic for approximately 2 years now. And again, I'm really happy to be here so I can get at least some information out there regarding this topic.
Absolutely. And we're happy to have you here. And like I said, we kind of went over some of the questions that we were talking about today. And people, if you have questions, feel free to submit them. We'll try to get them answered as soon as possible. Okay. So the first question is, a lot of people are kind of concerned that the vaccine was developed so fast and, it's such in a hurry that people don't trust it. They say vaccines take like 5 years to develop. This one was so fast. Why should we trust it? Can we trust it? Could you help us out there?
Yeah. To break it down into the two parts, essentially, is the vaccination developed so fast. So first, we kind of have to break down, there is old generation and then there is new generation vaccinations. So the new generation vaccination is what these vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines are. Now, the actual, studies and the development has actually been perfected over the course of decades. So the development of, being, quote, so fast, actually, no, it's been, decades of perfecting, gene sequencing, and so that we can get what's called a particular mRNA sequence. So now, the other types of vaccinations are more old generation vaccinations. And if you ever heard of the split between, there's live vaccinations, which are basically like a weakened version of the virus. And then there's killed or inactivated vaccinations, which are like, the proteins or like small pieces of the virus that can be introduced. But with the COVID-19 vaccinations, they're new generation. So essentially, it takes what's called a messenger RNA. And I guess I should probably go with how a virus kind of, replicates anyway first before I kind of go over these new generation of, vaccinations. So just to really quickly go over with a virus. So a virus can be either like, RNA or DNA, sequencing. It's genetic material. Now, viruses can't really replicate on their own. They need to use a host, cells and tools in order to replicate. And, its purpose is just to replicate and spread, information, essentially, kind of following, like thermodynamics, with the transfer of energy and information. So with this type of virus, it's a RNA virus sequence. It's surrounded by like a capsule shell, and it has these, you can call them like, I guess, keys. So called like spike proteins, and they lock into a receptor, an ACE2 receptor on any, a host cell. So in particular, like in the lungs. And so it injects the genetic material. And so it goes into the host cell nucleus. And then you have, if the terms from high school biology, transcription, translation, and, so things are transcribed into materials or messenger RNA. And then that can then be translated into proteins to then replicate and form the new virus, so that then it, spreads out and keeps replicating, things like that.
So the way you explain it, I understand. So I don't understand everything, but let's break it down. I want to break it down like, so if somebody says the vaccine, so are you saying that because it is because of like technology, because of new technology, it doesn't take that long to develop vaccines? Is that basically what you're saying?
Correct. And the way that they have done it is that the genetic sequencing of the virus can be done really quickly. And so once we have the genetic sequence of the virus, they can sort of reverse engineer to create the messenger RNA, so that then with that messenger RNA goes into our own cells, and our own cells reproduce only what's called the spike protein. So it doesn't produce any of the other components that would make up the virus, only the key or the receptor that a virus uses to get into a cell. So essentially, it's just only like you go into Home Depot and recreating a key. So then our body's immune system recognizes or starts to see this key, and it starts to build antibodies, and antibodies can then neutralize that key, so that when you do actually get infected, then your immune system is already like, hey, I've already seen this key before. I'm going to attack it and block it from getting into cells. So that's essentially what happens.
Which brings me to the next question. If you already had COVID, do you need to take the vaccine?
Well, yes, but first, let me just when it comes to now, what are the reasons why it can be developed fast? Is one, that gene sequencing technology,
Okay.
but two, this has been a massive coordination amongst like different countries and different scientific institutions, so that makes things a lot faster. And then also, there's been a lot of funding. And when it comes to research, genetic research, microbiology research, a lot of time is spent trying to get money. You're writing grant proposals, things like that. But when that's kind of cut away, and like it's an emergency fund, that's another reason why it can be sort of developed much faster than what, again, old generation
So
vaccination.
you're saying during that 5 year test time that usually for a vaccine, it's not that they're testing, it's like they're trying to develop the funding and things like that. And because this was, I'm assuming, we have this pandemic, people are deciding that we need to focus on this right now and let's move forward. Is that what you're saying?
Pretty
Because a
much.
lot of people think things were skipped during the process.
Well, basically, when it comes down to when they refer to that, they're probably referring more towards the clinical trial aspect of things. The phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 clinical trials. Now, in general, we do like to be extra, extra, extra cautious with these clinical trials, but technically, they don't need to last that long. If we already have like a good amount of information already. It's just that there's a lot of, it's just basically being extra, safe. I'll give just a quick example for like a medication that I prescribe. Now, about like 7% of people can have this medication, deposit in their eyes. But that's if it's, done over the course of like 10 years or something like that. So, as to be extra, extra cautious, we do recommend people on this medication to get yearly eye exams. But technically, they don't have to. It can be every 5 years. But, again, it's just being extra, extra cautious. So when, in general, when there's not like a real big, need or necessity or emergency, we can be just extra, extra cautious by having the clinical trials span longer. But when there's more of an emergent need, that can be shortened if we already kind of have a grasp on what are the side effects that happens, and then and then we track. So that's when it comes to the speed of things. Okay. Now, the second part of what you said is like, should we trust it? And yes, the reason why, and over the course I've gotten or seen, understandable reservations because of past, medical atrocities, especially with people, Black community and things like that. Yeah. A lot of times they'll bring up the Tuskegee experiment, but one of the things is that, the Tuskegee experiment didn't really deal with vaccinations. But if you're still using that example as to just say, to be cautious of the medical community, well, one of the things that came out from that is stringent, protocols when it comes to clinical trials, so that, these things don't happen again. And a lot of times when people are saying, I don't trust, because this Tuskegee, well, it's like, well, have you done actual, like medical research now? And they wouldn't really. I've been doing, I've been in, bench research. I've been in actual clinical, research. And, even, scratch a patient's eyebrow without having, documentation, things like medical legal papers signed, explaining things, to the T to get the grant funding. Because institution, they can really, really get heat for, messing around and not doing things properly that is deliberately malicious towards patient, or or even mistakenly, no one's perfect. But again, because of those past atrocities, it is a lot. It's almost impossible to either get funding for research, especially when it's involving people, without having a lot of, and also there's peer review, independent, scientists that, do this kind of for a living, where they read other papers, other researches, and then they scrutinize. That's what, I had to do in my fellowship, was we had to send our, protocol and research,
Sure.
research protocol, and then our paper, and they send back with like feedback in, almost like, rough draft, and you have to modify, or they say explain this more, just things like that. So
Yeah. So we gotta kind of move on.
Yeah,
So my question next is so do you believe that if you already had COVID, a lot of people are saying you don't need the vaccine. So I remember I had COVID. People say that you develop, these antibodies like you were discussing earlier. So do I need to go take the vaccine if I already had COVID?
Yes, you do. It is recommended. The reason why is because it's just like make a quick analogy, I guess. So let's say you decide to work out, 2 days out of the week, out of 1 week. Do you then just stop working out? No, you have to continue. So, for example, if you already had COVID, you do develop, the antibodies, the adaptive immunity. But the thing is, it's better to kind of have your immune system still prepped and ready to go, because over time, the antibodies in your system do kind of fade away. You still may retain some what's called T cells. Cells produce antibodies, and T cells sort of communicate with B cells, right? So, so if you had COVID and recovered, it's still recommended to get the vaccination.
Okay. So you say you still should get it no matter what. So tell us, because we got to kind of wrap up here but I want to ask you a few questions before I bring on Dr. Mohammed. Now, so there's been some things like side effects. So I saw like individuals say that they got Bell palsy, that, did you see the nurse video where she said she took it? She was like, it's the worst thing in the world. Do not take it again. So are there some side effects like that will have your face hanging down to the side if you take this?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's called Bell's palsy. So basically what that can kind of happen in general. So for example, people who don't even take the vaccine or anything, there's about 23 cases per like 100,000 people in the United States that just get Bell's palsy. So the clinical trials, the Moderna had 4 people per, like 30,000, but 1 person was actually a placebo that had Bell's palsy. So if you break down the percentages, that's about 0.013%. And in the Pfizer, it was 443,000, which is about 0.0093%. Now, the cases in the United States in general is higher. So you're more likely to just get Bell's palsy by yourself than with these vaccinations. It's just that, it makes it sensational to just say like, oh, the side effects. But also I can, just real quickly, I can kind of give you side effects of, and I want you to try to guess what drug this can be. Severe allergic reaction, sudden death, heart attack, stroke, ventricular arrhythmia, pulmonary hemorrhage, retinal hemorrhage, muscle aches, upset stomach. What type of medication can do that? What are the side effects? I'll give you like 2 seconds.
Well, let me see if the audience have anything to say on that. Let me see here. Yeah, I don't see anything. I'm thinking that sounds like some narco.
Viagra. So, people don't care about the side effects when they can see the right there benefit of the, the medication. Who cares about all them side effects? but
Yeah.
kill you
Yeah.
worse than these vaccinations. But when it always comes down to, preventative, where you don't really see the benefit until like, or long term, or if it's like hypothetical benefit, because, we don't know if we can't predict if, you'll get COVID or not, you know, always, I got to look at the side effects and everything. But,
Yeah.
again,
Sure.
Viagra can kill you more than the vaccine. So
I'm glad you said that. So I'm glad you said that. Okay. All right, let me see here. So here's one last question for you. So do these this vaccination, does it compare to what, because I was having a conversation with someone, I'm like, well, maybe this compares to getting vaccinated as a kid, like, before you go to the school, you have to get, these different shots. Does that compare? Like, is it the same or is it different? Help me out there.
well, like, what do you mean is like vaccinated as a kid?
Like,
is it because the reason why?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm like, in order to go to school, you have to have certain shots. You have to go take certain shots. Is that kind of like where this is coming from? Like, is it the same as that type of vaccination? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I've never been vaccinated before, I don't want to get. I'm like, well, if you've been to school, you had to take some shots, and I believe some of those shots was a vaccination. Am I right or am I wrong?
Well, it depends on how this virus behaves. If we find out that it's continuously to mutate, then it might be something more, or it's recommended to get yearly flu vaccinations. So not necessarily like the same vaccinations as a kid, more so I would say comparable to like flu vaccinations, where just to prevent any real outcome from actually getting the virus, it's just recommended, especially if you're in a vulnerable population.
Sure. Okay. And I have one question, and before I bring on Dr. Mohammed, I'm going to let him speak, and then I want you to stay by just in case we have to, talk. If you have questions, you might have questions for him. So if antibodies only last for a short time, how is the vaccine long lasting? That's what a question from the audience.
Okay, so the antibodies, basically, they're looking at, it may be around like 6 months or so lasting, but again, that comes from B cells. So just because the antibodies kind of stop, being produced by B cells, does not therefore mean that the T cells that, they're memory T cells, they still retain memory. So they just have to communicate back with the B cells to start reproducing the antibodies again. But it's like having soldiers that require special like rounds in their guns. But then when they kind of stop seeing the invaders, they because let's say it makes the gun heavier or something like that. Well, then, but the generals, they still have the memory. So then when the generals see the foreign invaders again, then they just tell the soldiers to be like, oh, well, take these bullets and put them back in again, so that's the reason why. So it's really a breakdown of innate versus adaptive immune system. And then the adaptive immune system is broken down between B cells and T cells.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Jackson, for coming on, man. It's good to see people that you went to high school with as doctors and doing well for themselves. And I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I'm going to put you in the background right now, but I'd love for you to stand by as we bring in Dr. Mohammed. He has the other side of this. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you. All right. How's it going, Dr. Mohammed? I'm saying your name right, Dr.
Yes, sir. Akili Mohammed.
Akili Mohammed. Thank you
yes, sir.
for correcting me there, sir.
No problem. Thank you for having me on here, bro. I appreciate the platform.
Yes, sir. You come highly recommended, and I'm happy to have you here. And I would love to start. Could you just explain, give us some of your background before we get started?
Yes, sir. I am a family medicine physician. I trained at Meharry Medical College, did my residency in Texas at the Houston Medical Center. I've been practicing medicine actually in this new year coming up. It will be 26 years. I practiced traditionally for probably about 7-8 years. and then made a transition to holistic health, because I just wasn't seeing the type of benefits. It just wasn't what my vision was of practicing medicine, pushing a lot of medications and sending people to specialists and those type of things. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to see people heal and grow and change their lifestyle and solve problems. So I made a transition to holistic health, and it was founded on the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad and How to Eat to Live. And since I made that transition, it's been a lot more fruitful, a lot more satisfactory personally, and seeing people solve their problems instead of having medical problems all their life and still dying with those same medical problems. It's been a wonderful transition. So again, thank you for having me on. And I'd like to just shout out your brother too, Dr. Jackson. Gave some good information. And I just want to make this statement prior. I've never met the brother before. Nothing that I'm saying is an attack on him. Nothing is to try to cause any, rift between us. I respect him, but, I have to speak the facts based on what I've studied, what I've seen in my career, and then some other information that I'll share in a minute.
Sure. Yeah. We definitely want to make sure that we have both sides of it. A lot of people say you should take the vaccine. I know and others say you shouldn't, and we want to hear, why you shouldn't, and let people judge for themselves. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, I'm assuming that your position is the vaccine is bad. Tell me, why do you think the vaccine is bad?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that the vaccine is bad, my brother. I would say that I can't speak about this vaccine in a vacuum. I have to speak about this vaccine in the reality of the history of vaccines, and then what I have studied as far as this specific. Like my brother gave a good examples. He explained it, I thought, very well. But the part that he said that I haven't seen the same information is that they have perfected it. To date, they have tried to do an mRNA vaccine for the MERS, the SARS-1, and a couple of other infections that I don't remember right off the top of my head, but they failed miserably. They have not had any success with an mRNA vaccine. And so there are three things I think we have to take in consideration. The first is that I think it's difficult for any doctor or person to take in consideration that a vaccine is safe without having read the book Medical Apartheid. Medical Apartheid is a book by Harriet Washington, which chronicles all of the horrible and horrific things that have been done to Black people in the name of science. They tell us it's safe. They offer us money sometimes to do these tests. Big corporations or big foundations like the Carnegie Foundation and other foundations are promoting these things. Organizations like the NIH, the CDC, the FDA, HHS, which was a part of the Tuskegee experiment, all of these government organizations were practicing these horrific things on us. And so when we take that as the first reality, the second reality is that the history of vaccines have never proven to have solved any medical problem. When you look at polio and you look at measles and you look at mumps and rubella and tetanus and all these different problems that so-called were solved with vaccines, it is proven that all of those medical problems were on a severe decline before we even started vaccinating because of infrastructure. So that's the second problem with just trusting a vaccine in a vacuum. The third is, as I said in the beginning, I'm not saying that this vaccine is bad just off, with no thought process. The reality is that what I said about they haven't had a successful mRNA vaccine to date, and then all of a sudden now you have it all figured out and you're going to rush it through a process. And then secondly, the demographics of these both studies, the Pfizer and the Moderna study, had 9.3 and 10% Black people. So just for easy math, let's just say 10% Black people. That's not enough percentage of Black people to push a vaccine all over the world. There hasn't been studied in enough people to say. So to say that a vaccine is safe, you have to, number one, understand the process of making the vaccine. So we have to understand, how did you extract mRNA? And they didn't extract mRNA and then use it in a vaccine. They extracted mRNA from this COVID vaccine spike protein And then they synthetically produced mRNA and put it in a micelle that goes into the body in nanoparticles.
And for
All
those
these things are new.
who don't understand mRNA, what is that?
So mRNA is like a messenger molecule. For instance, I'll make it real simple. If you write a book and you put in your book, this is copyrighted, do not copy this unless you get my approval, right? And so I come to you and I say, hey, bro, look, I want to, there's a section in your book that's just off the chain, man. I want to share that with my people on my live show. And you say, okay, cool. What do you want? I want page 23 to 37. And you say, okay, good. You're good with going and copying that. So I go and I copy those pages, and then I take it over here and produce other copies so that everybody can have a copy. That's kind of a basic understanding of what mRNA is, because mRNA is the way that DNA sends its information to the cell to do what that DNA is instructing to do. Did that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you said, is it your belief that no vaccines have ever worked in the United States?
No. I wouldn't say that they haven't worked. I would say that they have not done what they are prescribed to do. All of the diseases that were so-called eradicated by vaccines, there's no proof that that is true. There's no study that said that it did what they say it does. So no, I'm not saying that a vaccine hasn't done anything. I'm saying that it's a lot of false information surrounding vaccines because there's so much money in it. These companies are making a lot of money, so they're trying to push it to us fast. You look at the rate of mental retardation, the rate of autism, the rate of ADHD, all of these medical problems that are neurodevelopment type issues have increased along with the number of vaccines. So there are a lot of things to question, but I can't make any 100% statement. But okay, as I say, there's nothing been proven on one side, and we haven't proved anything on the other side. But there are a lot of questions to be asked.
So do you suggest people? Because somebody in the audience, they had a question. They says, the problem is that when you made the comment about only 10% of Black people were participating in the trial, and one of the individuals said that it's because of some of the rhetoric that you're using now. So people they're fearful, so they don't want to participate in the trials because of fear. Do you believe that's true?
Well, no, I would disagree with what the person said because they use the word rhetoric. Usually the word rhetoric is not based in factual and actual information. Everything that I said is 1000% in actual facts. We have been experimented on, and my brother talked about Tuskegee experiment. Yes, that's one horrific study, but we have been studied many, many years prior to that, and we have been studied right up to recent times. They have not stopped experimenting on us. And so that will be very similar to me as a husband. My wife has been cheating on me the whole 10 years we've been married. And now all of a sudden she's telling me, hey, baby, going in 21, I'm not going to cheat on you anymore. I can't trust your word. You're going to have to show me something. And so all of these people, the reason why they have a Black coalition against COVID, the reason why they've been having all these town hall meetings, the reason why I've been having town hall meetings with Fauci is because they know they haven't earned our respect. You can't get my respect by talking. You have to get my respect by doing something. And when people talk about the fact that they bring up Tuskegee experiment, they bring up Henrietta Lacks and the HeLa cells. Yes, those were two horrific things. But if that's the only thing that you can say that has been done wrong to Black people, it's because your research is limited. You haven't done enough research to understand how destroyed, how abused, misused, and murdered Black people have been in the medical industry. So no, I'm not spitting rhetoric. I'm telling the truth. And every Black person that is afraid, every Black person that is wary, and every Black person that's trying to pump the brakes a little bit, they are 1000% justified in doing that.
Okay. And I shouldn't say he used the word rhetoric. I think I just summarized it as that. He didn't say rhetoric. All right. Okay. So what is your response to individuals that have been suffering? Like, what do you suggest they do, and they want to take the vaccine? Like, what is your response to them? What do you say?
That's an excellent question. I have had friends and people that I know that have died. So, don't believe that I don't understand that this is real. But when I look at the statistics, and we have 7.3 billion people on this planet, and not even 2 million have died from it yet. I'm not trying to belittle the 2 million deaths, but that's a very small percentage compared to the world. When you look at statistics, you always have to put them in context. we're talking about coronavirus that's been thrown in your face every day for the entire year. And so why would you not be worried about it? But there are more people in America that are going to die from heart attacks this year. Why are we not pushing something in everybody's face about stopping heart attacks? There are more people in the world that are going to die from heart attacks way beyond how many have died from the coronavirus. Why are we not talking about that? Why are we not talking about the deaths from cancer? Why are we not talking about the deaths from other diseases that cause death more than coronavirus? So my thing is this: 97% of the people that have had coronavirus, they had mild symptoms, they got over it, and they went on with their life. So the statistics say that there's a 3% of the population. And now, again, if we're talking about 3% of the small percentage of the total number, then we're talking about a very small number of people compared to the overall planet and how many people are on the planet. So we have to understand that some of the things that you should do to take care of your health, you should have started that long time ago. You should drink more water. You should be doing more exercise. You got to stop eating bad food. You got to stop being as lazy to shop at fast food places all the time rather than coming home and cook. We know that we should be getting more sunshine. We have to get to doing those things because that's how you boost your immune system. And everything that I just finished saying, exercise, water, rest, the right type of food, sunshine, those things are proven to boost your immune system and help you not get sick. The vaccine, it hasn't been out long enough. We don't have enough studies. The stuff that they purported from the FDA was 2 months of information. We have 2 months of safety information. And that's just not enough for somebody to go out and take an experimental. And let me say this: the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines are purported to be investigational and experimental by the companies. So they don't even have any information to say that it's safe yet. The FDA has not approved them as regular vaccines. They've approved them as emergency treatments because they don't have anything else. But at the end of the day, we have to be careful because Black people have been experimented on way too many times.
Sure. I see Desmond is like itching to get back on. I don't know if you want to say something. Give you a few more moments, Desmond. I'll bring you back on. We usually don't go past 9:30, but I thought this was a very important subject to talk about and extend. So you just gave us some other methods as well. Like, so what do you tell people that, their jobs are going to tell them, like, you need to take the vaccine. You cannot come, you cannot fly. What do you say to them? Like, is there something specific you would say, or do you recommend them take it, or like, what do you say to people if their job or something?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very, very, very important and powerful question, brother. I can't tell anybody what to or not to do, but I'll say this: anytime somebody has something good for you, they never have to force it on you. That's number one. Number two, if a person comes to Dr. Akili and says, I have to, you're not going to put me in a hole like that. I'm going to make decisions for myself. I don't have small children anymore. But if I did have small children, they wouldn't be going to public school if they mandated that vaccine. They would be homeschooled. And the reality is that we as Black people have to stop being decision makers in fear. We have to make decisions with confidence. And we say we believe. You hear Black people all the time talking about, I believe in God. I believe in God. Well, if you believe in God and you really think that this vaccine is something wrong, nefarious, and evil, then stand with your God. He's going to find a way for you. So my faith tells me that we're going to make it through this situation. I'm not going to let anybody push me into a corner and make a decision. Well, you have to take this vaccine if you want this job. Well, guess what? God has taken care of me to date. I'll find something else, or I'll pull off this entrepreneur spirit, team up with a couple of my other people that think like me, and let's go out and make this bread a different way. But I'm not going to let anybody push me into a situation like that. So everybody's listening would have to make their own decision. But I refuse to let somebody force something on me and then tell me it's good for me.
Okay. All right. Let's bring that back, Dr. Desmond Jackson, as we, as we move forward. Dr. Jackson, you have anything you want to add or you want to say?
Well, I mean, that was a lot of stuff and topics that were presented. So I'll try to break down the ones that I could kind of remember, but I'm going to still try to, break this down here. So one of the points was mentioned that there wasn't any like vaccinations, reducing things like polio and all that, and measles and everything. You can track literally the populations of having these, really debilitating diseases. And when you track them, and then when the vaccinations were actually implemented, you do see a steep curve going down even further, like a slope. Now, yes, people in general, which is called herd immunity, which is basically essentially Darwinism, survival of the fittest. If you die, after a while of people having or being exposed, you will see a slight decline or a slope. But then again, when you're actually with a more civilized herd immunity, that slope, you see it tracking, it goes even steeper. So vaccinations to actually help with overall herd immunity in a more civilized way than just leaving it to people being, killed. Also, another thing when it comes
to— Can I ask you a quick question on that, bro? Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you a quick question? Have you, or can you share any studies that prove herd immunity? And can you suggest that we go to any study that you know of that proves any vaccine has done what they say it's supposed to do?
Well, there's different standards of like, what do you mean by proving? Proving is basically—
your statement was that the curve was coming down, and then when the vaccine started, it went down more steep. Have you, what scientific research can I go look at that proves what you just said?
I'll have to send you the links. I mean, I can't state them like from memory, but they're from the New England Journal of Medicine, Immunology Journal, that deal with going over the history of vaccinations and looking at, retrospective data linking when vaccinations have been implemented and the steep curves of when, the diseases have been not necessarily all mutated fully, but on the sharp decline. So there have been studies out there. And so, like, again, I'll have to look them up as far as, in those journals, but I've read them before. I can't state the actual of the names or specifics when it comes to the actual authors and everything like that. But in my training with immunology and rheumatology, you read these articles and everything. And so you just kind of keep them in the back of your mind. Now, when it also comes down to statistics and comparing, well, heart attacks aren't contagious. Also, you cannot take survival rate or death rate and attribute that to your own personal risk of death. Survival rate do not equal personal risk of death. So, for example, this virus can kill you in two ways. It can kill you directly by causing, damage to the cells that it infiltrates, and then cell damage leads to organ damage, things like that. The second way is indirect, where it causes your immune system to go what's called cytokine storm. Cytokine storm is when your immune system basically, hits the panic button. So then you have these cytokines, IL-6, IL-1, that, basically they're signal flares. So think of signal flares that soldiers, use, they pop signal flares basically to recruit. When you have actually excess recruitment and hyper extension of your immune system or hyperactivity, you end up having runaway cascade of clotting. So that's why you have people that lose their legs, that have pulmonary embolisms, heart attacks from this fluid that develops in the lungs. Now, we don't know, you don't know your personal immune system. You don't know how many ACE2 receptors you have. So you can get the virus and your immune system doesn't hit the panic button. But the virus in your immune system, based on, the type of ACE2 receptors you have, or the type of, how your immune system is just genetically programmed to hyperreact to this virus. So again, death rate does not equal your own personal risk of dying from this.
Well,
And
hold on just a second.
talk
Hold on
about
just a second. If you don't mind, hold on just a second. I want to put this back in context because you took what I said out of context. I was talking about the focus of people, the focus of the media, and making us look at the reality of this virus so much every day on the television that's what got people so inundated in the reality of it. There are a lot of things that you said that I would not argue with at all. But the point that I brought up about a heart attack versus the infection of this coronavirus are the numbers and what we're focused on. If news was accurate, we would talk about the number one killer and then go down until we got to the number of coronavirus deaths. So that was my only point on that. I agree with what you're saying to some degree, but the reality is that every single one of these infections that I don't know if you would agree or disagree, but since HIV, Ebola, bird flu, swine flu, SARS-1, MERS, all of these viruses have not been in congruence with what has happened in nature in the past. When I studied virology as a medical student and as a college student, there was not all of these viruses. So you're a little bit newer as far as education, so they may have been when you are. But when we studied coronavirus prior to this COVID-19, this new coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, it didn't act like this. And so that's another reason that we have to talk about things in a grand scheme and not specifying reality, because the way that this virus attacks the ACE system that you're describing, there has never been a virus that I've studied, and I don't think anybody else has studied, that has ever done anything that specific. And so that's another thing that a lot of people are saying, that I shouldn't say people are saying, scientists are proving and talking about, is that this virus has been manipulated by humans to attack us in that way. And when we look at the percentage of people that are having the type of problems that you're talking about, we're mostly talking about elderly and those that have comorbidity. So they're very sick. Their immune systems are very weak. But in every single one of those viruses that I just mentioned, the key to survival all over the world, no matter where these different viruses occurred, was the immune system of the victim. If a person had what was considered a strong immune system, their likelihood of getting over it is much improved. And so that's the point that I'm making from a scientific perspective. Your best bet,
that's not guaranteed because
your best bet is to take care of your immune system. And that's what the majority of people in all of these viruses have done. And I know you're about to talk about that's not guaranteed, but certainly you can't trust a vaccine that has never been produced before, been produced fast, and especially from organizations that have notoriously killed and murdered us in the name of philanthropy, in the name of science, in the name of doing us well. We can't trust them. You can't trust the information that they give you. And if you do, I tell you what, everybody, you're getting conflicting information from him, he and I. It doesn't make one of us better or worse. Nothing like that. It's just two different viewpoints. But those of you who are listening, 6 months to a year from now, the truth will tell you everything.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we're got to wrap it up. Dr.
Yeah. So
the last word.
Yeah. So ultimately, we were trying to make about the 6 month now type of thing. All right. So the side effect profile is basically having to understand pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics. So when it comes to long-term side effects of vaccinations, the fact is that you are more likely with a medication that you are getting consistently in your system, daily, weekly, monthly, to have side effects long-term than an actual one dose or one time, one injection, then 21 days later, another injection. So there's that case. Another, for that point, the point that you mentioned about healthy immune system, that does not guarantee that your immune system will not do cytokines. So, and because you have people, I see these patients all the time where they're fine, they have healthy, no pre-existing conditions, but then they end up having some type of either exposure to like an Epstein-Barr, exposure to just some random environmental cytokine storm that basically can cause rapid death. So that you can't really say. With also another point is that it takes a while for your immune system to reset to a healthier potential. So it can take up to 8 months for your B cells to actually reset to healthy. So if your B cell potential is around 60% and you want to eat healthy and take vitamin D, vitamin C, avoid tobacco smoking, alcohol smoking, it takes a while for your immune system reset. Help you if you're dying of COVID-19 right then and there. So I'm not negating doing those things to help, but at the same time, those are long-term treatments. They're not anything that can help you in the immediate term or the more emergent term. And then you had mentioned the time frame of the vaccinations. Well, again, it's all about clinical trials in history of how we see with the majority of vaccines, the long-term side effect is around like a 6 week. So there's nobody experiencing hardly any 5 years from now, my eyes fall out.
Okay, hold on. Have you heard of the vaccine adverse? Have you heard of the VAERS vaccine adverse event reporting system? Do you know that this organization through the vaccine courts has paid, to my understanding, somewhere in excess of $5 billion? So that may be your understanding, my brother. But if you don't do more deep research into vaccines and the injuries that they cause, then you can come to that conclusion. Your conclusion is a conclusion that's coming from the pharmaceutical industry and the information that they pose to doctors. But if you go to the vaccine court and you look at the number of people that have been injured with vaccines, there is plenty of information in the scientific realm that vaccines are causing a lot of medical problems. Autoimmune disorders, 1, neurodevelopment disorders, number 2, and in general cause a declining in physical strength of the human body in general. And then we don't even have to go into the specifics of what we know about mercury, and when you include aluminum with mercury, and then all the adjuvants and the specific things that those do by themselves. So I would disagree with you, my brother, that you can't trust the information solely from one perspective. You can look at what New England Journal of Medicine says. You can look at what the Lancet says and these other journals that most Black doctors are quoting from. But who is giving the funding behind those studies? Who is funding that journal that you all are reading? Unless you start balancing your information with information that's coming from different societies, different perspectives, then you always will have just one viewpoint. Now, and I want everybody to understand, you're listening to a doctor that when he was at the same time in his career as Dr. Jackson, I was pro-vaccine too. So I'm not saying anything to attack my brother. That's not the point that I'm saying. But after being a pro-vaccinating doctor for years, and then seeing some of the things that I saw, like parents coming to me and telling me that they are sure that a vaccine injured their child. The first time I heard that, I was like, man, you out your damn mind. That vaccine didn't do that. I was thinking the same way he's thinking. But when I saw it more than once, when I started seeing it happen over and over again, and I started reading different books and looking at different information, I was like, damn, I can't turn a blind eye to this information. I have to go start doing some research. And the more research I did, the more was uncovered that we can't trust it. And so I don't know where he's going to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. But at the end of the day, I'm not knocking him. I'm giving you a different perspective by a person that's been in the medical field a little longer. And I've learned that I can't look through just one lane. I got to look at things from a different perspective because there's a lot of information out here. There's a lot of different viewpoints. And some of the books that I've read, the science has proven what mainstream medicine has not.
Well, essentially, it's very difficult when it comes to the medical legal aspect. It's easier to settle things. So, for example, when you try to say, I got a vaccination, let's say in the year 2010, then in 2012, you end up having, cancer. Okay, well, it's hard to say when that 2-year gap, you could have smoked like a chimney, you could have done all these things, but then if you try to equate it to the vaccination, it's just easier to just settle those arguments in court, or to have paid out settlement.
That's an argument that doesn't have validity, because no major company is going to settle billions of dollars if they don't know that they're complicit. And I'll ask you a question. Do you know that this American government has admitted that the polio vaccine in the 50s and the 60s had SV40 in it, which is a known cause of cancer? Did you know that? That's actual facts. The CDC and the NIH have admitted that. That is a vaccine that was given to people in the 50s and 60s for polio, and it is the cause of many of the cancers that are in that age group of people right now. Did you know that?
Yes. And again, it's about pharmaceutics and pharmacodynamics. So,
bro, you're using a whole lot of fancy words that the people don't understand. If you and I were having this conversation,
I'm going to explain that. Because you can go outside. It's all about the concentrations of things. You can go outside and be poisoned right now. There's pollution, but it depends on concentration in leading to the actual effect of like cancers and things like that. So when it's in regards to vaccinations and the components in there, they're in small components where the risk isn't 0%, but again, it's in levels where, the vast majority of the clinical benefit outweigh those reports of, cancer and everything like that, because a person can smoke like a chimney, never get cancer. A person can smoke 1 pack a month, and then full-blown cancer. So again, it's all these variables here. It's a person's genetics. It's a person's immune system that depends on whether or not they can get cancer, from anything. You can take Tylenol, and based on your genetics, you can develop, fulminant. It's one of those things where there's always risk with anything that we take, with food, any food, and the same. I'll give one more example. Water. You can die from water, but it just depends on the amount that you take in. So all these things are dependent on concentration and how frequent you have these concentrations, or if it's like a high concentration over a short period of time, or a small concentration over a long period of time. All those factors depend on, and so it's not as simple. It's a lot more complicated. But yes, I do think that people just still need to, themselves in general, and learn more about these things, and make an informed decision. So I agree with you on that.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate you both for this lively discussion. Of course, this will continue on as the time go by. But I thank you all for taking your time out and even going an extra 30 minutes with you all, because I actually did not plan to go that long. But I really appreciate this. Thank
you, Dr. Jackson. I appreciate you both.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So as we close out, we are very thankful again for our guests. Please continue to follow the Good Night Show. We'll have more topics like this. We'll talk about these different issues. I'm just thankful for these two dynamic brothers, Dr. Jackson and Dr. Achille. We just really appreciate them for coming on. Please continue to follow us on the Good Night Show. Make sure that you all are just following us. My mentee standing next to me, distracting me. But hey, just follow us on the Good Night Show. Make sure you follow us so that we'll be able to give you more important information. Have a good night.